The movie opens 10 years ago in the middle of an active hostage situation. The husband inside has killed a police officer and is now holding his family hostage. He warns the cops to retreat or things will get nasty, but unaware to him, a Call of Duty-looking FBI team, led by former Marine turned FBI commander Will Sawyer, is coming in from the back. Will's team breach the home and rescue the family, but the husband holds one of his sons close to him in defiance. Will tries to reason with the bawling man, asking him to release his son, but the man suddenly sets off a bomb strapped to his body. Will is rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, losing his leg below the knee in the process. 10 years later in Hong Kong, we see reports about a billionaire named Zhao Longji, who has started building a magnificent high-tech skyscraper called the Pearl, which should take the title of the world's tallest building. We then see Will preparing for work, as he is now a security consultant, living in the residential section of the Pearl with his wife Sarah and twin children Henry and Georgia. Sarah comes to him, telling him how handsome he looks. She can see that he is worried about his upcoming meeting with Zhao Longji to review the security for his skyscraper, but reassures him that he has been preparing for 6 months and is ready. The family walk to the elevators, where they meet up with Will's former FBI colleague Ben, who also has injuries from the explosion. The two head to the top building and Will is astonished at its beauty. He thanks Ben for putting in a good word for him, but Ben sees no issue with helping out his friend. He leads Will through some massive doors into Zhao's penthouse where he meets the billionaire. Zhao has done his research on Will, knowing about Sarah's career as a naval surgeon and about his twins, as the family is the first in the building. Will is then introduced to head of security Ajani Okeki and Mr. Pierce, a rep from the insurance company who is waiting on Will's go-ahead to insure the building. Will then presents to Zhao his findings. The building's security is state-of-the-art, which is controlled by an off-site facility. He has approved all the Pearl's systems, with only an inspection of the off-site facility pending. Zhao thanks Will and gives him sole access to the Pearl's fire and safety controls, which is linked to his biometric data. As Will puts the tablet away, we see that Ben is up to something. Will leaves and Ben confirms with an unknown person that Will has the tablet and he needs to get Will on a boat. Zhao brings Will to a room with multiple reflection panels he controls from his watch. The room has cameras on both sides which can make it appear invisible, which Zhao nicknames Heaven. Ben and Will board a ferry where he tells Ben about the room they were in. Ben wonders if Will ever misses the old FBI team, but Will states that he has a family now, and he hasn't touched a gun in 10 years after the attack. Ben thinks it was just bad luck. But Will is grateful as Sarah was his doctor and the rest is history. The two arrive at their location, unaware a man is following them. The man pulls a knife and suddenly cuts Will's bag and runs away in the crowd, letting off shots. Ben chases for a bit, but soon returns to Will, helping him to his feet. In the basement floor of the Pearl, a technician is doing maintenance when he notices a crack forming in the wall. The wall suddenly crumbles, revealing a hole, but when he goes to check, an arm grabs him and strangles him to death. It is international terrorist Correz Botha and his team who begin moving explosives into the room. Ben helps Will with the injury he got in the attack. Will goes to call his wife, when Ben realizes that Will actually has the tablet in his jacket. He heads to the bathroom pissed and gets a call confirming that Will has the tablet. Ben gets through to Sarah, who is returning home with the kids. She runs into Botha and an associate who had thought the residential floor to be empty. They claim to be checking the phone lines, but they give off a bad vibe to Sarah. At Ben's apartment, Will is ready to leave when Ben suddenly pulls a gun on Will, ordering him to hand over the tablet. Will realizes he is serious, so he attacks and disarms Ben. Ben throws Will around the room brutally and manages to detach his leg. Ben pulls a knife, but Ben deflects his attacks before tackling him into a table. Ben goes for his gun, but in the struggle, he is shot in the chest. Even after this, Will tries to help his old friend, begging him to explain. Ben painfully tells Will that Sarah and the kids were not supposed to return home. We then see Botha and his men spreading a water-reactive chemical on the 96th floor. Botha then lights a flare to set off the sprinklers, which sparks a massive fire. Mr. Pierce wants to evacuate the building, but Zhao is unfazed as he is 100 floors above the fire and perfectly fine. Just before Ben dies, he warns Will that men are coming for him and the tablet, and he needs to run. Will then hears sirens and hurriedly attaches his leg. In the distance he sees the Pearl on fire. He goes to leave but is ambushed by men with guns and is forced to escape through the fire escape. But as he lands, a woman tases him, knocking him out. They take the tablet from Will and activate it, but before the woman can kill him, the cops turn up, allowing Will to escape in the gunfight. The woman jumps in a jeep and escapes with the tablet, and Will chases after her. But his one leg cannot carry him fast enough, so he borrows a police bike and gives chase. The cops surround the burning Pearl, and Inspector Wu is briefed on the situation. But the cops are not aware that Sarah and the kids are also trapped above the 96th floor. Sarah has Georgia wet towels and gives Henry his inhaler as she plans to attempt to escape the building. Georgia is worried that they are going to die, but Sarah reassures them that they will be okay. Botha and his team change into tactical gear and orders the woman Zia to infiltrate the off-site facility. Zia and her team then burst into the facility and gun down all the workers there. She herself then takes out 2 armed security and flashing display of feminism. Will arrives at the Pearl, but the building is on lockdown. He FaceTimes Sarah, telling her to find a logistics panel in the hallway, and he will help her from there. Zhao gets the alert that the Sawyers are in the building and orders Ajani to send 2 men and bring the family to his suite. Zhao then gets an alert at the offsite facility, where Zia has her hacker use Will's tablet to gain admin access to the Pearl. She reports to Botha, who orders her to seal all the floors below the fire and disable anti-fire measures for the flows above, causing the fire to rage out of control. Sarah and the twins brave the thick smoke and get to the control panel. Will realizes that is happening and tells them to move to the floors above immediately. Botha then orders the hacker to use the airflow to spread the fire and burn everything to the top. At that moment, Sarah and the twins are met by Zhao's men at the elevators. But the fire is sucked through the vents and flows up the elevator shaft, causing a massive explosion, killing the men. Will is still on the video call and yells in terror seeing the explosion. News reports around him begin to name him as the suspect, and the cops around him turn their guns on him. Will pleads with them to let him save his family, but the cops still attempt to arrest him. So Will fights back and escapes. The hacker hands Zia the tablet, quite proud of the work he did to get them into the tower. Zia is so impressed that she shoots him dead. Ajani advises Zhao that if they wait any longer to evacuate, the fire will superheat the helipad, making escape impossible. Zhao reluctantly agrees, and they prepare his helicopter. But before he leaves, he accesses a secret room and a safe. Will gets to a construction crane next to the Pearl. He is unable to access the elevators, so he decides to climb on the outside to the top. Inspector Wu is briefed on Will and his background in the FBI, his family, and his role in the Pearl. They suspect Will to be behind the attack. Just then, he sees Will on a news camera climbing the structure and orders his team to bring him into custody. Will is almost at the top when he spots the cops trying to get to him and begins to push himself even harder. Will does a daring move to get to the top, almost slipping on his way up but managing to catch himself. He blocks the entrance to the construction crane, trapping the cops who had used the elevator to get to him, before beginning to operate the crane, moving it closer to the Pearl. Jay reveals to Ajani that he knows that Botha is behind the attack on his building, as the mercenary is trying to get a device that he shows to Ajani. Will extends the crane towards the building, but it's not long enough, so he swings the crane's hook, causing it to crash through the building. Will then climbs onto the top of the crane, but the cops cut through his barricade and hold him at gunpoint. Will then suddenly sprints towards the building and launches himself, barely managing to catch himself from falling to his death. The citizens who had been watching the broadcast all cheer him on. Zhao, Ajani, Mr. Pierce and his men are heading to the helicopter, when Ajani realizes that the man inside is not their pilot. Suddenly Pierce pulls a gun and opens fire. Botha and his team also ambush the men and a fierce gun battle erupts. Botha soon wipes out all of Zhao's men, leaving him alone, then reveals that Mr. Pierce has been working for him all along. Botha reveals that the men he works for wants both Zhao and his drive. Ajani regains consciousness and suddenly shoots the helicopter pilot, which sends the chopper crashing towards them in a ball of fire. Jay recovers and quickly escapes with Botha firing at him. Zhao then activates his safe room, barely making it inside and locking himself in. Botha radios to Xia to open the doors, but she realizes that the penthouse has its own independent security system. She picks up movement and sees Sarah and the kids on the cameras and informs Botha. He and his team are gathered outside the penthouse looking for a way in, but soon realize that only Will can get them access. Botha then hatches a plan to draw Will to him. Will is inside the building but injured with a metal shard in his chest. He gathers some items before painfully yanking the metal out and taping the wound closed. He checks the security monitors, plotting a path to get to Sarah before grabbing an axe and setting out. Sarah and the twins are braving the smoke and heat to get to safety when they run into Mr. Pierce. He grabs Sarah, ordering the kids to follow him also. Sarah suddenly stabs him in the leg with scissors, giving the twins a chance to run away. Mr. Pierce pulls a knife, but Sarah somehow manages to defeat him. She tries running to the kids, but the path is destroyed by debris. Georgia and Henry are running through the garden when Henry's asthma begins to act up. The two stop when a burning tree comes crashing down between them. They plan to meet up at the waterfall, with Henry taking the longer route around. Meanwhile, Sarah is held at gunpoint by Mr. Pierce, who plans to kill her for attacking him. But Will turns up and pushes Pierce over the destroyed bridge. The two hug each other in relief. Henry turns up at the other side of the destroyed bridge and shows his parents Georgia, who is at the waterfall. Will then puts down a piece of plank as a makeshift bridge, allowing Sarah to get to Henry. On their way back, she slips, but manages to pull both herself and Henry back up and make it to safety. Will has to get Sarah and Henry out of the building. But since the magnetic elevators only work below the 96th floor, he plans to have it free-fall through the fire until the magnets can kick in. He reassures them that they will be okay and promises to bring Georgia back before sending the elevator falling. Two mercenaries encounter Georgia, who begins screaming for Will, who hears her. Georgia runs into the boiler room with the two men tracking her down. They almost find her when Will attacks them and tries escaping, but Botha holds him at gunpoint. They bring Will and Georgia to the door, ordering Will to open the doors. Will tells them it is impossible, but Botha tells him that anything can be done with the right motivation. His men then grab Georgia and take her away from him, with Botha promising to throw her off the roof. They beat Will down and take a screaming Georgia away, leaving Will on his back and out of options. Will then seize on the news that Sarah and Henry have made it out alive, and this motivates him to find a way to Zhao. Will then locates an external security panel for Zhao's penthouse, which can only be accessed from the outside of the Pearl. Sarah and Henry are brought to Inspector Wu, clearing Will's name and informing them about the mercenaries. Wu identifies Botha from her descriptions, but wonders why he would trap himself in the burning building, until Sarah informs them that the men are carrying parachutes. Will uses an artifact to smash the tough windows to the tower. He uses ropes to anchor himself, then wraps tape around his hand to help him stick to the glass, before climbing out onto the ledge. He gets to a point where he rappels down to massive turbines, but manages to jump past them. He successfully manages to reactivate the system opening the penthouse, but a massive explosion forces him to jump from the building. He grabs the rope, but ends up hanging from his prosthetic leg thousands of feet above ground. The leg slips, but he grabs onto it in time and pulls himself back into the building to the relief of Sarah and the crowd of people. Zhao goes to close the penthouse doors, but Will uses his leg to hold the doors open and slip inside. Zhao holds a gun to his head, but Will easily disarms him. Zhao explains that Botha had extorted money from him during the $6 billion construction project by threatening to cripple his workforce, but he kept a detailed computer file of the transactions as insurance, which can reveal accounts and names of 3 crime syndicates Botha works for. So Botha instigated the attack to obtain the records since his employers threatened to kill him. Will brings Zhao to the roof of the building where Botha and his men are preparing to jump. Will shows Botha the drive, wanting to trade it and Zhao for his daughter. Zhao suddenly grabs the drive and tosses it over the side of the building, distracting Botha and allowing Georgia to escape. The three run into the high-tech projector room where Botha and 3 mercenaries follow. The man cautiously move around, seeing multiple images moving around them. Zhao manages to kill 1 attacker, while Will ambushes and defeats 2 attackers, pulling one man's parachute which pulls him out of the building. The 2 men plan to find Georgia, when Botha opens fire on them before going after Georgia. Meanwhile, Inspector Wu and his officers track down the location where Botha is supposed to land. Zia is there with her mercenaries, and engages the cops in an intense shootout. Zia is wiping out the cops, and almost ambushes Wu, but Sarah attacks her. The two fight, but Zia gets the upper hand, and is about to strangle Sarah until Wu holds her at gunpoint. Zhao gets shot in the attack but urges Will to go find his daughter. Will grabs a gun and goes searching until he comes upon Botha, holding Georgia and a grenade. He warns Will to drop his gun and Will complies. He then orders Will to hand over the drive, but Will is actually behind Botha and kicks him from the building, killing him. Will and Georgia are now trapped as the flames begin to close in around them. He holds Georgia close, reminding her that he loves her as they face their end. Just then, Sarah takes the tablet from Zia and manages to reboot the security systems, which put out the fire, saving Will and Georgia. Will then finds Zhao still alive and the three walk out to be saved. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more movies like this.